Change. Do you fear it or do you embrace it? Welcome back everybody to another episode. My name is Sally and Nassar, and today's topic is going to be about change, specifically in the past 2 years. So the pandemic came around in 2020, and yes, I'm giving off a news reporter vibe, but we're just gonna give a brief summary for the past, year and something, almost 2 years in March. So Mrs. Pandemic, Mrs. COVID, Mrs. Corona, Rona, Auntie Rona, whatever it is that you guys want to call her, him, her, whatever, came and changed our lives. So it snuck into our world and said, come on now everybody, it's time for a change. But we weren't ready for the change. We were not aware of this change. So Mrs. Rona came around and said, you guys need a shuffle. You guys, that's it. You need to kind of get back and figure out what you guys want to do in this life. We were living our best lives. Now we realize that. So we were able to travel whenever we wanted. We were able to attend concerts, gatherings, weddings, hug our loved ones, not wear a mask, not sanitize, not all of that. And then overnight, or if I'm not going to be dramatic, over a couple of weeks, we started realizing that this is all being taken away from us. So Rona came about and said, it's time for a change. So what I did was, I did a small focus group with a couple of my friends and family members, and I kind of just wanted to touch on this topic and briefly understand from them what was change for them in general. What is change? The definition, their understanding of change, and how do they deal with change? What is their perception? What are their tactics? What do they do? And what was really interesting, and we'll start with our first question, is what is change? What was really interesting is that everyone in the past year or so defined change the same way, which was getting out of your comfort zone, pushing yourself to self-develop. Change is constant, but this change was different because it kind of forced us to change at a time where maybe we weren't ready to change. So change is constant, change is inevitable. It's something that forces you to get out of your comfort zone. It forces you to get out of your stagnant self if you've been stagnant for a while. And change is something that is everlasting. We all change. We change every day. We change every year. But each change is different. So this change it really kind of came out of nowhere, changed our lives it turned our lives upside down, and it was done so quickly. So it's something that doesn't really happen this often. You'll find that people, life changes them, but it's on an individual level. But we're talking as Mother Earth together. My friends and family members were like, change is not easy. It's not easy, and some people deal with change differently than others. So this was kind of like what opened up to my second question: is how do you handle change if it came around, when you didn't want to per se change? And everyone said, it gives you anxiety. It gave us anxiety. It made us, feel fearful of what's to come. The uncertainty, our dynamic, who we are as individuals, who we are as, society members. It was such a fearful time for most of the people that I interviewed, and everyone couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They just saw change, this word, this pandemic, this virus. They saw it and they couldn't see past it. And what I realized was that is the journey of change. And there's a quote that I came across in this book that I'm reading, which is The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. So what Robin Sharma says, change is hard at first, messy in the middle, but then gorgeous at the end. And when we're at the first stage, we can't see that it's going to be gorgeous at the end. And this is just kind of how life is. We never are able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, although we always hope to. But there's always the self-doubt inside of us, that voice in the back of our minds that says, things aren't going to be good. Life is going to be miserable. You're not going to bounce back. You're not going to go through this. No one was able to understand that this is something that we will eventually live with, and it'll be something normal. I mean, if you guys remember, when we were first asked to wear masks, sanitize our hands, not go out, not leave our house, lockdown, curfews, travel bans, people getting stuck outside their own homes, country-wise, not being able to come back to their house, to their home, to their country. So you're asking people to adapt to that, and it's not easy. But what my advice is for you, and it's something that I've done for myself, is that embracing change, the mindset of looking at change as something that is going to help you, make you realize who you are, reshuffle, redefine, re-objectify what your life is all about. Change no longer becomes your enemy, change becomes your friend. And that way, every time change comes around, be it big like a pandemic, or be it small like changing your diet, whatever it is, you'll take it on as a friend. So always look at change as a challenge for the better good, a challenge to make you a better person and a more focused person. And this is the stage that we have reached today. From fear of change, from fear of the pandemic, from fear of adapting to the new norms of life, to now living with it, becoming more creative, understanding lockdown and quarantine and all of that forced us to sit with ourselves and say, what do I want out of life? What is really important in life? What is my passion? What is my hobby? Who am I as a mom? Who am I as a wife? Who am I as a child? Because you were forced to sit there and think about these things. And there was so many success stories where you have talents on TikTok that came around, entrepreneurs that started their own businesses, YouTubers who opened up their own channel, people who relocated to different countries, people who changed jobs, changed career paths, people who started families, people who got married. It was such a fruitful year. If you really sit and think about it, it was such a fruitful year, and a lot of positive things came out of these 2 years. So I moved back to Kuwait after living in Lebanon for 8 years almost. I moved March 6, 2020. Okay? I landed in Kuwait, and then March 7, the airports were closed and everyone was asked to stay home. The pandemic was around for, let's say, a month, but March 7 was that's it. Everyone was locked into their houses, and I had just landed, and I landed with a job. So I was so excited about my new job and my new career, and coming back to Kuwait and my friends and my family, and it's where I grew up, so I'm so excited to see everybody. And then I was asked to stay home, and I'm like, what do you mean? This pandemic it's gonna go 1 or 2 weeks max, it'll go. And then I remember like it was yesterday, I sat with my luggage. I had 5 suitcases, and I'm like, did I make the right decision? I'm starting a new chapter in my life here, and that chapter is asking me to start it in a way where that's not my plan. That wasn't my plan. My plan was different. So I'm not gonna lie, it was so hard. It was so hard to get acquainted, back to living in Kuwait, different culture, back to starting a new job with a new boss, new field, because I was in corporate and retail, and now I'm in consulting. So all these changes, new career path, not new country, but going back to a different culture. Even the fact that I had to snap out of it really quickly because I want to impress, you know, my team, my boss on you know, in this new job. I don't want this anxiety and this fear of all this pandemic to kind of affect me. So what I was doing was I was in survival mode. Moved back, dealing with all of that. I barely even, you know, got acquainted because I was going with the flow, you know? I never sat with myself and said, okay, Sally, you're back here. This is what you're doing. You know, it's a new chapter. I just went with the flow, survival mode, fight or flight. That's exactly what I did. And then the pandemic just kept getting worse. You know, the cases started getting higher. We lost friends and family who we know. I lost my grandmother in Lebanon, so I couldn't even go and visit her. I couldn't even go and pay my respects. You know, all these changes were happening just constantly. And I was just, you know, just moving as fast as I could just so that I don't sit and feel. I didn't want to feel change. I didn't want to feel the emotions behind the change. But I'll tell you what, I cracked big time. And that's when I'm like, what am I doing? What is this burnout? You know, like, this is not how I should be going on about for another day, not even another hour. So what I did was I sat and I wrote down all my changes in every area, personally, professionally, geographically, and financially. Okay, so remember, it was these four, and I only wrote the positive changes in each one. I didn't even think of the negative, although that's all I was doing for like maybe 2 months. And I wrote the positive thing that came out of the changes in these fields today, and what I'm gonna make out of these 4 fields positively. What are the changes that I'm going to make positively in the next 6 months? And I stuck to that as my mood board. So I had quotes up, pictures that would inspire me, future plans, future goals, future countries that I wanted to visit. And I knew that wasn't gonna come around now, but I was seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I was seeing what change can do at the end. If you want to see the gorgeousness in change, this is what you do. So I just wanted to, you know, share my thoughts on this topic. I'd love to know what you guys think about change in the comments below. And if you guys can share a success story during the pandemic, what changed for you? How did you deal with change? And what would be your advice today for someone about change? Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.